I'm going to get started so I don't hold anyone up here. And I will do my best to be able to show the viewers on Zoom my face. I've got some people here in the audience. So welcome. My name is Barbara Tilka, and I'm with the How Money Works Learning Center here in Jacksonville, Florida. So you guys are all pretty much local, I believe, coming to us on Zoom. So what I'm going to cover, and everybody's going to get a copy of this book, How Money Works, Stop Being a Sucker. For those of you who are out on Zoom, we will arrange to make sure you get a copy of it. So we're teaching from this book. Just so you all know, this is not a sales presentation. I'm not going to be selling you anything financial. This is an opportunity for you to learn financial concepts, and more specifically, I'm going to be dealing with the real estate industry and specific challenges and, in my experience, mistakes that I often see realtors make, and 1099 income type contractors. So a lot of you may have a W-2 job and do this part-time. A lot of you may do this full-time, and so that your income is variable, and it is, 1099. What does that mean? Yeah, or you have another 1099. Yeah. So what does that mean? Well, that means you've got to be very savvy about money, and most people don't understand. Taxes are the nasty word that everybody thinks about. Unfortunately, I'm not a tax advisor, but I can tell you, you have to be working with a good tax professional, but you also have to be an advocate for yourself, and you have to really ask questions. How can I lower my taxes, Mr. CPA? What are some of the things that I can do? And really press on that. Now, a lot of people call me and say, okay, talk to my CPA with me, and I do that because I do help with some of those challenges. You don't want to wait till December 31st to have this discussion. Certainly, if you've had a great year and made a lot of money, that's great. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to pay massive taxes. So that's part of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our mission. We are a financial services company, but we're a financial education system. So that means we help people with their finances, but we really make sure people are understanding the concepts so that you have these life skills. And every generation in your family should learn it. The book that you're going to get a copy of is for age 14 and up. Unfortunately, we don't learn this in school. I didn't learn it in high school. I didn't even learn it in graduate school when I got my business degree. So it's really critical. This is a mission we're on, and we're trying to spend as much time as we can teaching people literally how money works. There is no sales to this. The way we get paid is if you need our help. There are things that we can represent and help you with, and those providers pay us. So it's pretty awesome. Certainly, if some of the things I talk about. Questions?
I think the coolest thing, or like the thing that I think is important for us as 1099 people, is the option for retirement. We don't have employers putting money away or anything else, and there are options for us.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I do have a lot of clients that have their own retirement plans. They're business owners. They could be a solo business owner. Maybe they're a realtor. Maybe they're an attorney. I spoke to a realtor the other day. She's putting between 40 and 50,000 a year inside of her retirement account. And it is a 401k, and she's the only one on it. So if you've had great sales and you're not saving anything for retirement, and young people in the room are probably wondering, what the heck are we talking about? Long-term saving, avoiding tax. All right, let me just show you real quick on this video, if I get the sound.
WealthWave has a significant impact that reaches beyond local communities. With over 350 appearances on major networks like ABC, CBS, CNBC, Fox, NBC, and SiriusXM, and features in Newsweek and the Wall Street Journal, WealthWave, along with the Money Book series, has established a strong presence in the financial industry. These media features not only enhance our message of financial education, but also add credibility. They enable us to engage a wide audience and lead conversations on financial literacy, reinforcing our role in promoting financial empowerment. Our dedicated network of educators work together to foster knowledgeable and financially empowered clients.
All right, so some of you may have seen it already on some of the news outlets. and it's continuing to circulate. This actually came out 4 years ago, right when COVID hit. So we pivoted and went completely virtual, and all of our news spots were all virtual, which is funny because I'm having Zoom struggles and I've done thousands of these. So anyway, just a few things. I'm just going to go over why it's really important to understand, what are the wealthy doing? Think like the wealthy. This is what we're teaching. All the concepts and things that they know about. The title of the book, Don't Be a Sucker or Stop Being a Sucker, is just literally because not understanding how money works sucks your time, your money. It is a financial crisis in this entire world, all over. And so just, recent study, when you look at financial literacy all over the world, 30% of the people in the world are financially illiterate. Or I'm sorry, 30% of the people in the world are financially literate. The rest are not. Imagine a time when people couldn't read the written word and the disadvantage they had when they couldn't read the page. We have that same problem with money. So 44% of Americans can't cover a $400 emergency. What comes to mind? Car repair, dental emergency. That doesn't work if you don't have an emergency fund. 43% of student loan borrowers are not making payments. This is a special part of our practice, is helping people with student loans. And as a realtor and trying to get someone who can get approved, if the student loan is an issue, we have great specialists that we work with to really make sure that your clients are reporting the correct debt to income ratio. And there's a lot of things to the federal loan system that people don't understand. So we work very closely with understanding what kind of a mortgage are they getting and what is their debt, and is the student loan a problem with that? All right. Over 9,000 in average credit card debt balance carrying households, and they're paying about 37,000 in interest over 30 years if they continue to carry that balance. 33% of American adults have zero retirement savings. And so, as I mentioned, only 28 out of 50 states require high school students to take personal finance course to graduate. And how many high school students have a side job, a part-time job? I see it all the time. Friends of mine ask me, how should my kid save? Where should he put it? Parents are scrambling to teach them, and they don't really know what's the good advice. The sucker cycle is what we really focus on with our clients. Is, okay, what are you spending your money on? Be very aware of it. Are you just constantly living paycheck to paycheck? I did a workshop last Saturday. I can't tell you how many people the workshop said, I'm just living paycheck to paycheck. And if you learn anything today, it's not how much you make. I have people making high figures that come to me with massive debt. And I have people who are making a modest income, but are able to save, have an emergency fund, buy a home, and keep that home. So it's really, people often say, well, once I get a pay raise, or once I make more money, or once I sell another house, you have to be able to handle the money that you make. All right. So this is just a graphic of, if a plane were the example of your retirement, and you're trying to fund it for the rest of retirement. A lot of people are retiring in their 60s. They could potentially be retired for 30 plus years. How much money does that take? Often people will say, Barb, how much do I need for retirement? Well, everybody's different. And it's important to know, what's your Social Security number? How much have you saved? And for a lot of people, their home is their biggest savings, or their 401k is their biggest savings. And then factor in other personal savings.
So if someone's worried about retirement, and I can put myself out there, I use my retirement to move down here.
Yeah.
But how do we even know how far off we are?
Well, I can tell you the tools that I use as a financial professional. I'm an investment advisor. I do a lot of planning and projecting for my clients. Knowing where you are now and how much are you contributing, how old are you, what is your goal, all those factors are important. If someone tells me that they can live on $40,000 a year in retirement, that's a different number than if someone says they need $100,000 a year in retirement. I mean, there's a lot of factors involved.
What's the average number of years that people are living in retirement?
25 plus.
Right, okay, so now you're saying, for when retire. That's 40,000 on a cheap end, if I can make that work, for 25 years, how much is that?
How much do you want to spend for 25 years?
40,000 a year.
40.
Is that just to pay your bills or to have the life you want?
Okay, so I
Is that like a
definitely
late-
want 80. But.
How much?
A million,
Okay,
so,
remember, you have to make sure you don't lose any money, because where is it coming from? If it's in your investments, if it's in a 401k, then you have to make sure that it's growing, not taking major hits. You lose 30% in your account, what does that do? You gotta stop retiring?
right,
So all of those factors have to be considered, and taxes.
so again, so modestly, $40,000 for 25 years is $1 million, so I need to retire.
And you
But on
have,
the other side, if you, for 25 years, if you're making 10% interest off of your $1 million, that's 100,000 a year. So if you're making 5% interest on it, then in theory, you could leave that principal and
Right.
just live off the interest.
Right.
And then leave that to your kids.
That's what
because-
most people do. Well, if
So-
they've done it.
Yeah.
Just one.
yeah, so all those factors, you have to have someone who's licensed, who knows what they're doing. Googling it and winging it can be problematic, because where is the money sitting? I'd say trillions of dollars are sitting in the bank. And why do people leave it in the bank?
It seems.
They think it's safe. Is it earning anything? And you've got to have, you gotta be outpacing inflation. You've gotta have it growing. All right, so what we talk about obviously is not running out of money in retirement. My mother-in-law worked till she was 82 because she had to. The only reason that she stopped working is because a friend of hers died and left her some money. But she's in memory care and she's run out of money. Nobody factors that in. Reliable income is what we talk about. Reliable means guaranteed. So what does everyone think of when they think of what will pay me for the rest of my life, no matter how long I live?
Government pension.
Social Security
Mhm.
is one. If you die, it stops. What else would be a pension? So the word pension is a generic term for you're getting paid for as long as you live. No matter how much money you started with in the bucket, the pension number, they pay off, they pay according to that number, but they'll keep paying even if you withdraw more than you put in. Which is, if you outlive it, that's the best scenario. We set up accounts for people who do the same thing. So if you're not someone who works for a company with a pension, which is most people now, we can build the same guaranteed income, future income, with the money you've saved. So another really great option for people, especially people my age, who are saying, "Ooh, how much more? How many more years can I save? I don't have 30 years." All right. Power of compound interest is one of those terms that we want to teach. Essentially, it's interest on interest on interest. So that's where that growth comes from. Of course, what kind of interest is important. So what's the difference between simple interest and compound? Can anybody tell me an example of a simple interest example? Same interest,
Carlin?
car loan. So you know your payments, you know the interest, you're paying it for 5 or 6 years. It doesn't go up. What's a compound interest? Nasty, that just keeps growing.
Pressure.
Credit cards, because the interest on the interest, because it adds to the balance, and that's what's, that's against you. Investing, it's in your favor. So a simple interest example, you know that you bought that $30,000 car, you're gonna end up paying, I don't know, $36,000 in the end because of interest. You're okay with that. You borrowed someone else's money, you paid equal payments, and you're done. Compound obviously is where we can really grow money. And, the interest every year or every month, however it's applied, just keeps compounding on top of what you put in. And that's how you're able to really grow, to $1 million, if that's what you want. All right. So if you look at these, when we talk about rate of return, this is where you have to really pay attention. If you've got all your money sitting in the bank because number one, you want it safe. Number two, you think it's a great way to earn interest on CDs or certificates of deposit. You're just not outpacing what you need. So here's the example, starting at age 26. I think the original amount, just saving over time. So if you're trying to save, I guess, $1 million by the time you're 67, that's what, 40 years? If you get a rate of return of 1%, I don't think you're even getting that in the bank. You're not gonna meet, you're gonna be maybe at 100,000. If you're earning 9%, that's where you're hitting that million. Now, where would you get that? Well, if you looked at the last 70, yeah, if you look at the last 70 years in the investment market, now investment market is a general term, stocks and bonds and equity funds, it's the market. It has averaged 10%. So if you look at how many wars and pandemics and elections, it doesn't matter. You have to be participating. It's not about day trading and I gotta buy now and in 6 months I'll win. You cannot win your way into retirement. You can't, lottery. That's low odds. But this idea of, oh, if I buy this, that'll be my big hits. You cannot do it that way. And I see too many people trying to do that. It has to be consistent over time and obviously within your budget. The other thing is the time value of money. We're trying to teach people, if you start now, it's never too late. And if you save regularly, and be patient. So it's not timing the market. It's not, oh, well, if I make my contribution to my retirement account this month, maybe I'll get a better return. Here's a great example. There are characters in our book. Sarah is one of them. She's 22. She has decided to save, and she saves a little over $300 a month. She doesn't have a lot of bills. She's starting out in her life, but she knows she should save. She does that for 8 years. And then life happens and she stops saving that $300 and she never saves again. So she's put in a little over 32,000. And by the time she is of retirement age, 67, she's got over $1 million. What's going on there? Time value, compounding. So she's consistent and then she stops. Now, George is one of those that I see more often. Yeah, I'm going to wait till I pay off my car. I'm going to pay off my credit cards. I want to pay off my student loan. I'm going to wait till I get a better job. I wait till, he waits until he's 30 and he starts saving the same amount as Sarah, but he saves for over 30 years and he has less than she does because she got a head start those 8 years. So I showed this to my son, who's now 28. I think it was probably about 4 years ago. But I told you, putting aside $100 a month, and you project out what that's going to be when you're 60 something, he was blown away. So you got to be kidding me. Now, obviously, you want to put it in a good place, but consistently doing that, and that time is powerful. It really is. So if I were to look at how old are you when you decide, oh, I want to have $1 million when I'm in retirement age. How much should I put away every month, Barb? Well, you're 20, put in, about $100 a month. Oh, well, but I'm 40. Well, that number's about $700. What about my age? That's over $8,000 a month. If I really want $1 million at that age, yeah, no, it's not going to be at that point. So my goal of $1 million may not be so great at that age. Maybe I've got to adjust my plan. Yes.
What's your opinion on because there's been these new bank accounts coming out with 5% interest and stuff. Do you think those are reliable bank accounts to be putting your money in?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I have a lot of people that, are building an emergency fund, or they're building a fund for saving for a house, and they really can't take a lot of risk, right? Because that money's got to be there in the next 6 months or a year when they want to buy that house or they have an emergency. And it's a good way to have, your money is doing something, but it takes zero risk. So I highly recommend high yield cash savings accounts. We have one on our investment platform. You can have it in a retirement account, you can have a high yield cash savings, and there's no, I don't advise on the bank side because I'm not a bank person, but it's available. I think Chase Bank probably has a high yield savings. Take a look at where you're banking and just see, do they have a high yield savings? And that's where your savings should be. And you can get at it. There's no penalties. Okay, and you're getting a decent return. I'm not looking to see if they have any questions. So,
I
okay.
haven't seen anything.
I'm not gonna go through this, but just understand this program that we designed called the $1 Million Baby is a great estate plan or legacy plan. So if someone has just had a new baby and they want to contribute a certain amount to that child's future, the $1 Million Baby program represents, if I want to set up a new baby to be a millionaire at retirement, all you have to do is put in, we figured it out, it's about 13,000 in an account, set it and forget it. It has an estate plan built to it, so it's for the child, not the parents or the grandparents. And of course, it has compounding and time value. So it really is a great program. We've had a lot of people do it at christenings, grandparents, and the numbers are pretty powerful. And you'll see in the book how we dive into how is that possible. And what if you don't have 13,000? Well, there's a way to contribute about $250 a month for 4 years, I believe, and so that's where the differences are. I'm going to flip through that because I want to get to some of the specific stuff. The last concept I want to teach, big one when I learned this business, is the rule of 72. Has anybody heard of this concept? Okay.
Yeah.
And it is?
Isn't it double time? It's like, it has to do with also like environmental science as well. We use in environmental science about doubling time.
Well, it's the whole idea of calculating how long will it take to double your money. So it is a math.
Yeah,
Or
it's a math
double your.
Yeah, so you're always using the
That's
number
very
72.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if you were to look at where your money is sitting and you're earning 1%, 72 divided by 1 is 72 years. No one does that intentionally, but if you think about saving for retirement, if you have it sitting in the bank, it's not going to double. It's relying on you to just add basically dollar for dollar.
So that's like a typical bank account.
Typical bank account, not high yield cash savings. So if you look at some of the other numbers, take a look at if someone's earning 6% on their account. That's typically 6, 9, 12. That's typically a IRA, an individual retirement account, or a 401k. That's investments, and there's obviously a lot of choices within that. But that's where you're getting up how many doubles. So think about how old you are right now and what you might have as a balance. How many doubles do you have between now and retirement age? And that's what your goal is.
I need that 12%.
Yeah. And this is just shocking. Obviously, if you look at an average bank savings, it will take 400 plus years. So again, not intentional. Nobody does this on purpose. And if you're looking at credit card interest, most credit card interest it might start at 0 or 14. Doesn't matter how good your credit is. You're looking at 17 plus. And think about, 22 is the average. So that's where I'm seeing a lot of clients ran into trouble. And 4 years ago during COVID, they had to carry balances. And 4 years later, they're still dealing with balances they've been trying to reduce. And this is what's happening. I see a lot of people that have money in savings because it makes them feel good. But they've got a big credit card balance that they just keep trying to knock out. And it's crazy. You're earning 1% in the bank and yet you're paying 22. What's happening there, right? So what we do, we're teaching this, but we're really following a path of key milestones. The financial education is what you're doing right now. Running through all 6 of these steps that follow, this is true for anyone, no matter what age, 18 to 88. And I have clients all stages. But I run through these concepts with every single one of them. And some of these are more important to you than others. That's where I get to. I say, okay, what's the biggest concern for you? Now we talk about protection. If you are an independent contractor and you are physically doing your job, there's no disability insurance, there's no coverage, no benefits, what they call life insurance benefit at work, and you go down, who depends on your income? Is it child support? Is it a spouse? Is it a family member that you're paying the mortgage? That's where protection comes into place, and that's where we discuss that. Now, how much do you need? What kind do you need? And who do you get it from? Well, I mean, we're licensed, we're brokers, we understand all those concepts and we can make sure you get the right one for you. It's not a sales quote desk, it's definitely consulting, and it's important that we make sure you get, what works for the budget. Emergency fund is a really big deal, especially if you're in real estate and you tend to invest in properties. A lot of real estate professionals have their own investments. I run across a lot of them where they're buying properties and they're rentals. Nothing wrong with that. Emergency funds should be in place for your rentals. Anybody heard of getting an AC repair or roof repair or septic tank? Those are all in the thousands, right? So if you have a personal emergency fund, so that if you've maybe not sold a house in a few months and you got to keep paying your bills or you're sick, you got your personal emergency fund to cover your bills. But you also have to have one for your business. And this is where I think people fall short. They're kind of living out of their business account is their personal. And they're kind of robbing the business to pay for the personal. So you really have to look at what your emergency fund and where is it? I would say a high yield cash savings is a good option. I've got a client, he's 33 years old, he's got 8 rentals. He does have a full-time W-2 job. He's got some good people that do repairs for his properties, and he's got mortgages on 6 of them. But he has an emergency fund for his business. So out of his paycheck, he puts money in his personal emergency fund. He also puts it in his, when he's getting the rent from his properties, part of that rent is going to the emergency fund for the business. So that he doesn't, get hit when there's some kind of a big expense. Or if you don't get rent. Anybody ever heard of a tenant saying, hey, I lost my job or I'm transferring? And maybe it's taking you a month or 2 to replace that tenant. And then you've got to factor that in. Sometimes that's a few thousand that you've taken a hit on. So debt management's the other one. I touched on that when I talked about student loans. I've been working, over 20 years ago, I worked in real estate financing. I helped a lot of people recover their credit from some pretty rough stuff that was going on in the industry. And I think the debt management piece was the biggest problem. I think a lot of people are using credit repair shops, understanding, if I dispute things, then it'll come off. And that can be a real obstacle to buying a home or buying an investment property. So it's really important to understand what debt do you have and what's the cost of your debt. I see people that get 401k loans for boats and RVs. Oh, I'm borrowing from myself, or I'm loaning myself my money. No, don't mix that. I see people putting, let's say, a septic tank repair on a credit card because they didn't have an emergency fund, and yet they had a huge amount of equity in their home, and they probably could have done an equity line. There's nothing wrong with that when you're dealing with investment in your property, right? Roof repair, as I mentioned, those expensive things. So understanding how to handle debt properly. One of the biggest things that I see people do is paying off their mortgage before they do anything else. And young people doing that. And that's frightening because there's no cash. It's all in your house. And that's great, but if you need cash, where's your cash? You have to sell your house? So that's a big problem with retirement savings I'm seeing is people are really, quickly trying to pay off their mortgage before retirement, but they're not saving in retirement. So they have no cash. All right. Cash flow is really where we help people budget. And I've talked about some of these things, just sitting down and figuring out where's your money going? Where is it going? Can you, tighten up on a few things? Should you be saving towards an emergency fund and you're not? Maybe you're paying PMI on your mortgage and you've got a hell of a lot of equity and you didn't realize you should call them up and say, hey, can you remove my PMI? Sometimes that's $100 a month. I've got a client, it was $500 a month that they were paying.
Wow.
Yeah, they're not calling you to say, hey, we think maybe you're at 80% LTV or lower. So that's really important in the budget discussion. I call it finding the money. I find it every time. Just the other day, this gal was paying $87 a month for her student loan, and she's really tight on her budget right now. She's not supposed to be paying anything. That's $87 free that she found. So there's a lot of things that we do on the cash flow side. And some people actually come and work with us. And, this is another side gig, just like some people are working in real estate part-time to satisfy some of their financial goals. So sometimes it's just your main income isn't enough, you gotta pick up a side gig. Building wealth is the fun one. That's usually where most people talk to me about investing and have fun with that discussion. I would caution you not to be investing if you don't have an emergency fund. Don't throw all your money in your retirement account. Right? Now, build wealth is also where I talk to, especially realtors, 1099 income, is understanding, are you paying a lot in taxes? If you've done really well and you owe in a lot in taxes, well, that's a good problem. But understanding that there's ways to shelter that money from tax. I'm not a tax professional, but you have to really lean in and talk to your tax professional and say, hey, wait a minute, how can I reduce that? If you're gonna hand it over to the IRS, you might as well try and shelter more for yourself. What does that mean? 401k, IRA, those kinds of accounts that you can set up. We set them up all the time, doesn't cost you anything to set them up. And there are times when you'll have a year where you can contribute a lot, maybe there's years you can't. But that's a definite, keeping more money for yourself is really, really, really important. The last one is protect wealth. This is really touching on estate planning. And a lot of people look at me funny when I say estate planning if they don't have a huge amount of assets. Well, everybody needs an estate plan. If you're over 18, you need to make sure you've got your documents in place. And that simply means for you, it could be, I need to have a power of attorney. If I can't make my own medical decisions, I got to designate who's going to. I can't make my financial decisions. Who's going to be your person? That power of attorney. And most important, if you have children under 18, you absolutely have to have a will. And that will should say, the guardian assignment for your children. Because if you don't have that in place, then the state has your plan already. And they're in a court, they will decide who gets your kids. And that may not be who you decided. So all those documents, we do have a really affordable estate planning tool that we offer a lot of people. I know that when someone closes on their first home, big priority is make sure you keep that home, that your budget's in good shape. For a lot of people, it's their first home. It's about 6 weeks into it, you start looking at the first mortgage payment, you're like, okay, we got to start figuring this out, and making sure you have an estate plan. Young family with young kids has a house, maybe a couple of life insurance policies, that's a big mess if you don't have any documents in place. So that's not going to go through too much of these, what kinds of life insurance and all that. What I thought I would do is, I was going to do a little quiz here. I only have a few people live, so they're the ones that get the prizes. Sorry, people in Zoom land.
Yay.
But you can play along. I'm going to start with, if you did your little quiz in front of you. All right. So we're going to start with the first question is percentages. If you owed someone $500 plus interest, which would be higher to pay back? Is it A, $510, or B, 500 plus 5%?
B.
That's right. You got it right. All right. Second one, inflation. Lots of fun. We keep hearing about that. If both your income and the price of groceries, gas, and all other products you buy were to double over the next 20 years, how much will you be able to purchase? Is it more than you can? Is it less than you can, or the same?
The same.
It is the same. It can be a little tricky, don't overthink it. But yeah, if everything costs the same and the same money, you've got.
Doubles too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't read that part actually.
Yeah. Compound interest, as I mentioned, you have $1,000 in a savings account earning 1%. What would your balance be after 10 years if you never withdrew any money from your account?
B.
Is it more than 1,100, exactly 1,100, or less?
More.
No. A.
Yeah, it is A, more than 1,100, because every year you're getting interest, which bumps up your principal.
So-
The next year, your principal plus, not much, but yeah, I'd love to say 10% would be a better number on that. Yeah. So the impact of losses, when we talk about investments, risk, okay, and real estate, but hopefully not. Yeah. So suppose you lose 50% of a $10,000 investment. How much return would you need to get back to 10,000? Is it a gain of 50, a gain of 75, or a gain of 100? I think you said, see? Right, so if you've lost half. You gotta get, you got 100% of that loss back, then you're at just even. All right?
Like losses cost more than gains.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So risk diversification, is it more secure to put your money into one place or more than one place?
More than one place?
Yep, diversification, yeah. And on that note, I see far too many people pouring all their money in real estate. And they have nothing else. And it's just like buying tech stocks and nothing else. It's one sector. So you have to be really, again, as a realtor, you may be investing in real estate. You also have to make sure you're saving in other ways. You've got to have diversification. So how many people got all 5?
I did not get all five.
No? You got a prize you can pick from. If you want to come up, sorry, I'm locked in here. Is it Shannon?
It is.
Yeah. All right, good for you. Okay, so. Just touching on a few things, I think if I haven't mentioned, tax shelter plans are always great when you're an independent contractor. What are those? 401ks, IRAs, SEP, you may hear SEP IRA. Again, I would encourage you, if you've got a tax professional that's doing your taxes and they have not brought any of this up, let's get on the phone. We can do a 3-way call. We can talk about how you set those up. It doesn't have to be some fancy payroll system and 401k. A lot of you may have old retirement accounts from old jobs. There are ways to jumpstart that retirement account and move it into that. Doesn't cost you anything to do that. You do need someone who's licensed that knows what they're doing to help you move that and where to move it. So we can do that. What sort of benefits can you have as a 1099, business owner? I think I mentioned them. Retirement account. What else?
Tax shelter.
Yeah, the
Well,
tax
what
shelter,
else
yeah,
is it?
but what other benefits
Life
can you,
insurance?
you can have life insurance, you have disability, you can have all those benefits and you don't have to be working for a company that provides it. So, health insurance is a whole lot, I'm licensed to do it, but I don't do it.
Right.
I got people that can help you with that if you need that. The money milestones that I mentioned that I think really are important are, that debt management, managing your debt properly. Making sure you understand your budget, and especially when you have a variable income. I have a variable income in my business. Anyone who's full-time real estate, variable income. So you have to really be savvy about your budgeting. Because you're not consistently closing every 2 weeks like you would with a paycheck, right?
And then even if you are, it could be different amount.
Yeah, exactly. Your amounts can be very different. So just be very aware, you don't want to blow all of your success on owing the IRS and not really making sure you're planning for that. Everybody should, out in Zoom land, we'll make sure everybody gets a copy of the How Money Works book, so we'll make sure we get those names. If you do have clients that are having some snags with student loans, if someone's not getting approval because of debt, we do have specialists that really help with that. So, but thanks for everybody joining us. Good questions, and thank you on Zoom land. I think Kayla's recording this, so if you can see my name on the screen. If you want my contact, if you got any questions, I'm happy to answer them and make sure you get a book. So any questions from the room here? Yes.
With, how diversifying your money output and stuff like that, how much would you say percentage wise you would want to liquidate it, have in 401k, or just having a high yielding savings account?
I think as far as how much should you be contributing every month, it really depends on budget, depends on how much someone,
No, the allocation of the pie, I think is what she's asking,
Yeah.
how much, so.
So if you think of long-term investment, like if you do like the S&P, the indexes, or it's gonna cycle like this, but in the year terms, it's doing this. So if you put money in that, it might go half value that year, it might double But in the end, it's gonna go up, so you can't really access that cash sometimes. So if you
Yeah.
put it in your long term, don't pull it out,
Yeah,
because
I-
you might actually lose money.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about, if you're talking about retirement account,
either that or like how much should I, like, if I was to have a high yielding savings account, how much should I, like, percentage wise of all my income?
well, a rule of thumb is, 10%, but it really depends on you. How much debt you have, what are you living on, what goals you have short term. If you don't have an emergency fund and you're putting money in a retirement account, that's problematic because it's, penalties and taxes when you access it. So you don't use a retirement account for emergencies. If you've left a job and they gave you a statement saying, oh, you've got 3,000 in your old 401k, it's a massive hit to your taxes and penalties if you decide to cash it out. And a lot of people live on that because it's their emergency fund. They don't have an emergency fund. So living on the paycheck and making sure that, there's gotta be a home for every dollar of your paycheck. Whether it's emergency fund spending, long-term investing, saving for a home, there's gotta be a goal for every dollar and not have it just sit there.
So if you have 10% for long term, 10% for your emergency fund, what do you stand?
Well, I think it really depends on your emergency fund and how much you make. So 3 to 6 months is always a standard on how much emergency funds do you need, so how much do you spend every month on bills that will happen no matter what. And depending on the kind of work you do, but 3 to 6 months is the rule of thumb as far as having that in emergency savings.
And then knowing what's going on, so if you know, you can go 3 months with an emergency fund, if you know that you're working, there's nothing going on, but if you know. Hey, in about 2 months, I'm gonna have to go for that surgery. You might wanna stack it.
Yeah, so it's always knowing your short-term goals and your long-term, and also making sure that you're covering, an emergency.
Would you recommend having more than one retirement account? Having a 401k and then a Roth?
Well,
You
it
can only put so much in.
Yeah, it really depends on the individual as far as what you're allowed to do as far as the IRS. If you work for a company and you contribute to a 401k, you can have other retirement accounts, but you can not necessarily contribute to them. It just depends. So again, you need a professional to guide you.
But you could have an investment account that you're free to take from, but they tax each year, and that will grow.
So you're not
It's
really,
better than the.
yeah,
savings
just to correct, you cannot access retirement accounts without penalties and taxes. Unless you're a certain age.
Whereas if you had an investment account, you could. Pull it all
So
out.
investment accounts are very much like a high yield cash savings. You can put money in, take it out.
Is it that easy with all of them, or do you have to wait a certain amount of time?
Might take like 3 days.
It really
You
depends.
can wire it. and-
It's now a 1 day. Again, you've gotta have a financial professional that's licensed that knows all that. So if you're a do-it-yourselfer on Fidelity, we had a guy call us after the fact. He was, no, I do my own thing, and he made a mess of everything. Cause he pulled his IRA out, cashed it all out, didn't know he was doing that. So do-it-yourself can be problematic. No different than if I do my own plumbing. Right? If I wanna do my own renovation of my house, I'm gonna run into some problems with the electrical and plumbing.
So
So-
if someone wants to sit down with you and like kind of talk this through, how does that work? How much does it cost?
Well, that's a good question. So there's no cost ever to getting advice, doing planning with us. Again, we're paid by the providers of the solutions. If you need help with setting up an investment account, setting up some of your benefits, we're paid by the providers of those solutions. So that's really how we're able to help. We typically take someone through what they call a discovery meeting. It's basically looking at those 6 steps that I talked about. What's most important to you, or where are there gaps? Sometimes people come to me with statements from old accounts, or just, this is what I'm doing so far, this is my budget now. Most people don't really have a tight budget, they don't really have their numbers, they're like, yeah, I'm not sure what I'm spending my money on. So that's sometimes where we start. So those are just some of the things that we go through when we do that first meeting. And I'll be honest, if someone's saying, hey, I've got all this and they're in good shape and they don't need anything, I will tell them that. If they wanna be day trading and doing crypto, which we're not legally allowed to do, I can't help them. If you're doing it yourself, I can guide you on other things, but on the investment stuff,
You're legally not allowed to do crypto?
not in our broker dealer,
Not even like the Bitcoin ETF or,
no, not regulated.
no, the ETF that's on.
Yeah, it's not on our investment platforms.
Oh, it might in the future, but right now it's.
Yeah, all that's pretty
They
much
have a-
scrutinized.
Yeah.
Yeah,
due
So-
diligence.
we do work with Fidelity Institutional, so we partnered with them. Fidelity's probably 1 in 4 households use Fidelity, whether it's their 401k or individual. So we have access to all of those investment options. Because I am a fiduciary, I'm an investment advisor licensed to give advice. And you're working for a company and you have a 401k, I can also help you and give you advice on that plan. Very different than the open enrollment guy that tells you how to sign up. They're not legally allowed to tell you how to invest in the 401k. They can only tell you these funds are good to
7,
6
you have 6.
and 65. So good questions. I don't know if the Zoom folks are still available or,
Zoom people are still there.
okay,
Does anyone in Zoom have a question?
I wanna make sure we get them.
I'm going with a no.
Okay. Thank you, Zoom land, for attending. There'll be a recording. And I guess I will sign off here. Unless we hear otherwise. Is that good?
Yep.
Make sure everybody gets a book. Stop share.